Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court appointed and private, marriage counseling using the EFT method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550. And our website can be found at lifecoachdanamsalife.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our fourth episode of season 13, a special guest, Wendy Posillico, and high performance mindset coach. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to probably introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Wendy, the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Dan. So excited to be here. My name is Wendy Posillico. As you mentioned, I do high performance mindset coaching. But really, I struggle. I really helped people really connect who they are. So my whole mission is to help people find their uniqueness and find fulfillment in their being and then evolve from there. And so I really hold people's space. I don't have anybody's answers. And I do the same work I do with everybody else. So it's not, I'm not unique in that way, but we're all learning to be our best.
Beautiful. Yes. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Wendy. Now, obviously, as you know, we practice what we preach. So what have you implemented in yourself to be able to become a mindful person before you start teaching this to everyone else?
Gosh, I mean, I was a late bloomer for sure. Athletic, always came alive when sports when I played young sports. I played Division I lacrosse in college. And then once as a woman, once the sports ended, I really felt disconnected. Like on paper, it all looked good. I had my master's, I was teaching in Harlem, and I just couldn't understand why I felt flat. And I think my journey of my own discovery, I come from a very big Italian family from New York. I'm one of six in the middle. And I kind of got lost in not really going after the things inside that I knew I should have, but I kind of did what I was supposed to. So I really didn't wake up until I took up the sport of golf at the age of 28, 29. And it kind of fell in my lap mistakenly. I was on a spring break. My dad asked me to play golf, and I hated golf. I literally could not. It really, like, I don't know. It was just like watching paint dry to me. I was like, so boring. And my parents would talk and travel and talk about why the ball didn't go where it was supposed to. And I was like, oh God. So I just played with my dad that day. And I remember being on the range, and one of his buddies were like, God, Joe, she can hit it. And then another guy the same day, like, Joe, she's better than you. And so that night at dinner, my dad was like, I was teaching in Harlem, and he was kind of like, Wendy, you should really give this game a try. And I have to go back exactly. I think I was 28 at the time. And I remember thinking, is this my second chance? Because I left so much talent, even though I was Division I just never had a coach or someone like take in what I knew I had in me. And I was like, is this my chance? And, your head, when you're going in a direction or even thinking about something that's so outside the box at the age of 29 to take on a sport, I think my head was like, I'm nuts. Why am I thinking this? But then my gut was saying, go. Yes. And I had no idea how to get there. And that was really the pivotal moment of when I started discovering who I am. Because I was going in, there was no cushion. Even though I came from, my dad was a successful businessman, there was no I was just putting myself in a total direction that made no sense. And not many people believed in me, actually, to tell you the truth. My parents, they're good. They wanted goodness, but I think of my dad, Italian, he wanted me to get married, having kids, and I was going after this crazy dream. And so I went down that road. I mean, I can go into what the sport taught me, but to me, that was the beginning of the struggle of going down a direction that my heart was saying go, but like I had everything pulling me in a different direction, if that makes sense.
Yes. So what made you become a coach? Was it because you wanted to have another way to express yourself outside of sports?
So I played professional golf for 7 years, and somehow I knew I didn't want to go back to Harlem, and I got in the profession of teaching. So I taught golf, and that's again how things happen. Like you don't even know how things pop in your lap. But some guy took a risk. I never taught golf before, and he took a risk, Michael Breed, and he took me on, and I worked in the golf industry for 10 years. However, I worked for two different companies, elite courses, elite teachers. One I worked for 7 years. Both I got let go of.
Okay.
So I think in my head, what happened was I watched how I learned about my mindset as a performer in golf, but also when I taught golf, I realized how I taught a lot of successful businessmen, billionaires, that they didn't bring that same mindset to the course. And I was like, how do you would never run your business the way you're taking on this game. So I just realized there's so much not taught to us. I know I was left without a mindset in my early age. And I just realized like how much we need to start training our minds to connect to who we are.
I see. Did you get your pro card with the PGA Tour and all?
I went through three qualifying schools. My second qualifying school was an AHA, because I thought I was ready. The first one, you're learning. Second one, I was 5 years in. A lot of investment, of a lot of sacrifice, a lot of money I spent to get there. And then I failed. And at that time, I remember I never wanted to call my mom or my coaches because I was embarrassed. Like I was like, how do I go put all this into this game? And I knew I had talent more than some of these girls. And the only one I called was my girlfriend from college who played lacrosse with me. And she had introduced me to a guy. That day I missed the cut. And he was in Tahoe, California, and he was a chiropractor who did some self-development work. And I called him up. I was like, I don't know why I'm calling you, but I'm hitting my head against the wall. And I was like, I don't know why I feel so like, I know I'm supposed to do this, but like, I'm not tapping into my talent. So he had me take this personality test, and 20 minutes later he called me. It's like, what does golf have to do with team? And I said, and I was like, nothing. And he goes, well, why do you play the game? And I remember that moment because I remember I never really asked myself that question. Even though I knew I had talent and I wanted to be on the LPGA, I never really had a deeper meaning. And it just came out of my mouth. I was like, I'm supposed to be on a platform to give back to the world, or I'm going to meet someone on this journey that's going to help me get in that direction to help the world. And he said, good, because you holding a trophy will make you happy. And it was such an aha, and it put the pressure off. Like I went into next year training. I gave myself one more year, and I just said, life is going to unfold the way it's supposed to. And that was like such a, I don't know how to explain. Like, I think it's so funny how we go, into jobs, or, we go down these roads and we don't really ask, like, what do we want out of this, from a deep level, not the obvious, and I think it was an aha for me at the age of 35. Like, how did I spend 5 years, like sacrificing and all this stuff? And like, I really didn't have a deep down reason,
And then when it comes to helping your clients to be able to find their true calling, either
Mhm.
being in business, being teaching, being in sport, whatever it is, are there specific strategies that you use that actually kind of bring them to that aha moment?
Yeah. I really start with, we call it the ethos. Like I start with them really getting clear with what makes them great, and actually going back into their own story, because I know I learned a lot by my own story, to see where we stood for something, see where we struggled, it was more in the stories that I love to learn with my clients is the times where they struggled, but somewhere they found like a way to stand for themselves. And I think they can learn a lot about who they are and where it disconnects in their current life, if that makes sense. So we really go into ethos. So they learn their strengths of character, learn their philosophy of life. And they really, it takes time. Like this is not, it doesn't come overnight, but the philosophy, the personal philosophy, the thing that makes them tick. Also learning about influencers in their life. Who do they gravitate to? So we really get into that and then make a declaration of like, who do you want to be? Like moving forward, what do you want and who do you want to be? So to me, that is like the meat at the beginning. And of course, it's always evolving, but that getting clear, it gives them some strength to get into the mindset, to get into the being part of living your June is what I call it. But, we all have a uniqueness. And like, if we don't walk into that or embrace that uniqueness, we're leaving that untapped. And so I think that's what I was missing in my life early on. And I feel that's when I help people the best is like get really clear on who they are and what makes them great and alive.
Mm-hmm. But do you feel, I mean, when you said when you said something about living your June, is it the month that you're talking about, the month of June?
Yes, I'm talking about the month of June, but the way I see it is the name of the company, it's again, evolved in time. It started off as Wendy Posillico Coaching that is morphed into this Live Your June. So my dad's name was Joseph June. He passed 20 years ago. He was a huge influencer in my life, even a pain in the ass, to tell you the truth, excuse me. But like he tested me and challenged me. And so I take a piece of him while I live into the things that make me come alive. And then my goal is to leave it for future generations, like my daughter, and her name is Josephine June. So she's named after my dad. So it's like, I believe everybody has this uniqueness and a responsibility to live into that essence that they were born to be, so we can make the world better and leave your imprint. So I'm a big believer in leaving a bold imprint. Like you don't want to think, oh, I should have.
Yes. That's the mistake a lot of people say. They always regret the choices that they didn't make or the action that they didn't take in their lives, and focus too much on the things that they should have done and should have, would have, or whatever else. Now, when it comes to people living in the moment, being mindful, is it something that you try to make them practice a lot? Because a lot of people always live either in the past on a future that is uncertain. They never understand really what the moment is, the power of now. So how do you bring them back in sync with the moment that they live their life in?
So I think of it, I mean, again, I think golf or sport gives a tangible thing to help people see that. It's very, mindset work is so hard, and that's why people, I feel like, kind of avoid it. But when you think of it from sports, like if I have to go to qualifying school and all the pressure is on me, I've got to be so in the moment. Or you think of, like any top athlete, when you see those people performing, they are in the moment. They cannot perform. Think of Olympic athlete, think of Kobe, Serena, whatever. They are so there, and they're not thinking about the past shot or the past. And I think it's very easy to get in a pattern of either past thinking or wishing your life was different. And when you connect to who you are, you can start to work on the things you have control over. I think it's all about control. And again, it goes back to sports. I mean, I only have control over this moment, over the ball. I can't think of the shot that I screwed up the time before. I can't think about, oh gosh, I got to shoot this score to get the cut. I got to be right here in the moment. And I think if your listeners or someone that struggles with past or future focus, they can think of it like a sport, or find someone that they emulate with and go, how do they operate? Oh, and notice things. And then when it's more about awareness, when do I get off track and bring yourself back to the focus? I mean, if I do it, I mean, We all have our moments.
We all have, absolutely. But now when it comes to a lot of people not trusting themselves or believing in themselves, I mean,
Mm,
like in the laws of attraction, it says that the thoughts becomes the things, but a lot of
mm,
people have to put action and belief behind it.
mm,
Now, when some people have dealt with traumatic experiences, whatever
mm.
that, either failure in business, failure in personal life, or whatever else, how do you bring them back into believing in themselves?
Again, to me, I think it goes back to the stories of past that have given them, they've had strength, but they don't recognize it. And I really, if they can, I do a lot of writing for them to unwind. Oh, I didn't realize this about myself, or I didn't realize I actually stood up there. That mattered to me. And making these simple connections that were in their life that they didn't recognize, and giving them fuel by those stories
Yes.
to use when they get off track or disbelief. And also self-talk is, to me, the confidence comes from awareness of your thoughts that affect your actions and your words. I mean, for instance, I'll just give you a perfect story. I mean, somehow I've gotten a pattern of saying, like, sorry about that. It's like sorry comes out of my mouth like it's just another word. And what happens is my daughters learn that. And we're working really hard to shift that vocabulary, because it's so I don't want to apologize for being me. I don't, I can use different language to say that point, that I can apologize, but not more empower, if that makes sense. So really watching our language that disempowers our belief about ourselves. And then it's like a pattern that it carries over, and, you know,
But do you think, like, I mean, when you say that you're sorry, but are you sorry for your actions, or you're sorry about bumping into them? That's the two.
I think I don't even think I'm sorry. I think it's become such a habit of language for myself. So this is, again, I'm late bloomer. I'm 51. I probably woke up in my 30s to 50 to be really connected to myself. But way back when, and you're a psychologist, you can understand, like, my patterns. Actually, I did some EMDR. Is that EMDR? With a little bit of tapping and releasing the energy inside of me. But like, I came to a story about when I was in first grade. I was on the bus and some guy lifted up my skirt, and I went home and was like sad. And my mom was like, "Oh, just put on shorts." And then I went back on the bus. But like, when I go back to the story, like, I didn't stand, and I didn't like stand for myself. And then I became like, it's almost like I became this apologetic human.
I see.
And so that's my growth. And I see, like, these little stories that we have to unwind to. And I'm not a psychologist like you, but I know they affect us and how we operate, even if we don't want to operate that way. So we have to really see our stories as strengths, and how we want to change going forward.
Do you use the emotional freedom technique in your practice as well when you teach others?
Again, I'm not officially trained, but somehow intuitively, I I know I do tapping work. I do a lot of deep breath work, which I've worked on. So I use different things to unwind the energy that's inside of the people I work with in a kind of intuitive way. Like, I don't ever have even like this podcast, like, I don't ever have like an agenda, because life is constantly evolving and changing. And when someone comes, it's funny, like, I always think clients that, like, they leave at the end of a magical moment, but they came like, oh, I don't really want to do this call. And so those are, like, to me, like, life is that way. Like, be open, because there's sometimes we can miss something that normally, if we're not open, we wouldn't see
I see.
or experience.
Mhm. In your mindset coach practice, Wendy, what are the most common issues that you see when people come to you that they share with you in terms of, like, this is my problem? So there must be some kind of common denominator that repeats itself from one client to the other. So which one would it be?
I think the most common is they actually don't. know their problem, or they don't know what they're thinking. So when they come, they know something's off. And then when they start to, first of all, they realize they don't have space in their everyday life to actually do this work. So I think the space, I think they become aware that like how important this work is. No matter who they work with, I think we all need someone to talk to, to unwind our thinking. Our brain is constantly in survival mode to like get us protected.
Right.
And I think the common theme is overwhelm. I don't know if they always put it as unfulfilled, but there's something missing.
Okay.
And I would say those are the two. And majority of people that come to me are usually already have been successful, but they're missing something. Like I'm not dealing with, we all have trauma, but they're not coming to me for trauma. They're more like something's off, and it might be just their community, like doesn't operate the way their unique self wants to operate. And they've been in this community for a long time. And it's just like, they want something, but they just can't pin it.
I see. So, but those problems that they cannot pin on, has it been in them for a while, or just there was a certain trigger that brought them to feel like?
Oh, it's definitely a trigger. I would say like usually it's a transition. Like it could be a death, it could be a job change, it could be a breakup, it could be a move.